White TSA agent accuses a black woman of a crime, shocked when he learns who she is. JFK Airport was a zoo, not the fun kind with cute pandas and lazy lions. No, this was the kind where every passenger was one bad day away from losing their minds, and every TSA agent was stuck dealing with the fallout. Screaming babies, pissed off businessmen, that one guy who always tries to smuggle a full bottle of Jack Daniels through security like he's some kind of genius. Chaos. Absolute chaos. And right in the middle of it was Brendan Hayes, a 32-year-old TSA agent who had already hit his breaking point. 9 years. 9 long, soul-sucking years of dealing with the same nonsense every damn day. People whining about taking off their shoes, rich folks acting like TSA didn't apply to them, and the occasional idiot who thought he could sneak a knife through the scanner wrapped in aluminum foil like some kind of criminal mastermind. Brendan wasn't some power-hungry jerk. Okay, maybe a little. But he took his job seriously. He was supposed to be the last line of defense, the guy standing between the country and whatever lunatic thought it was a good idea to pull a stunt at the airport. But lately it felt like he was just a glorified babysitter for entitled travelers who couldn't follow basic instructions. And today was already testing him. Nothing but false alarms. Some lady with too much jewelry, a dude who forgot his belt had a giant metal buckle, and a guy with a pacemaker who nearly gave him a heart attack when the scanner went nuts. Not a single real threat. Brendan needed a win. He needed to prove to himself that he wasn't just another cog in the machine, that he could still spot a threat before it became a headline. That's when she walked in, tall, black, dressed in a sleek black suit that probably cost more than his entire paycheck. She had that air about her, the kind of confidence that said, "I don't wait in lines, lines wait for me." The kind of woman who walked into a room and made people straighten their backs without even realizing it. And Brendan, he hated people like that. Not because of her race, he wasn't dumb enough to go there, but because she didn't look nervous. Most people got a little anxious going through TSA. They double-checked their pockets, fidgeted with their IDs, gave that awkward half-smile when he asked if they were carrying anything sharp. Even the innocent ones had some level of "please don't pull me aside" energy, but not her. She barely looked at him, just handed over her boarding pass like she had a million better things to do. Brendan stared at her name for a second. Monica Sinclair. The name didn't ring any bells, but something about her felt off. He waved her through the scanner. Beep, beep, beep. Oh, hell yes. "Ma'am, step aside for additional screening." She arched an eyebrow but didn't argue. Just moved to the side, hands at her sides, waiting. Brendan grinned internally. This was it. His gut told him something was up, and his gut was never wrong. He gestured to her bag. "Let's have a look inside." She let out the slowest, most exasperated sigh he'd ever heard but handed it over. Brendan unzipped it with a little too much enthusiasm and found nothing. Not a damn thing. Just a laptop, a couple of business folders, and a pair of sunglasses that probably cost more than his rent. He frowned. No way. She had to have something. "All right, arms out. I'm going to have to do a full pat-down." This time her expression shifted. Not anger, not fear, just pure, unfiltered annoyance. "Are you serious?" "Standard procedure," he said, barely keeping the smugness out of his voice. She didn't fight it. Just stood there, letting him do his thing. Brendan moved carefully, running his hands along the seams of her jacket, patting down the pockets, checking her waist. And then, jackpot. Something small. Metal. Hidden inside her inner jacket pocket. "Oh, what do we have here?" he said, pulling it out dramatically. It was a tiny silver airplane keychain. Monica didn't flinch, just looked at it like it was the most boring thing in the world. Brendan held it up between two fingers. "Care to explain this?" She tilted her head slightly. "Explain my keychain?" "Oh, I don't know," he said, smirking. "Maybe it's a disguise. Maybe it's got something inside. Maybe it's some kind of..." "Some kind of what?" she interrupted. "A terrorist keychain?" Brendan's smirk faltered for half a second. He could feel people watching now. Other passengers were slowing down, whispering. A couple of TSA agents had even glanced over. He doubled down. "I think we'll need to take you in for further questioning." The crowd murmured. Monica just let out a short laugh. "You're joking." Brendan's face hardened. "Do I look like I'm joking?" And then, for the first time, she really looked at him. Not with anger, not with fear, with something else. Something that made his stomach tighten just a little bit. She shook her head, almost amused. "All right," she said implicitly. "Let's go." And she walked ahead of him, not like someone being dragged into a TSA interrogation room, like someone who already knew exactly how this was going to end. Brendan didn't know it yet, but in that moment, he had just made the worst mistake of his entire career. The interrogation room was about as welcoming as a back-alley dentist's office. Fluorescent lights buzzing like they were one power surge away from giving up, gray walls that made a prison cell look cozy, and a table so scratched up you'd think TSA agents had been using it as a cutting board. The place screamed, "We don't actually expect to find anything, but we sure as hell like making people sweat." Brendan Hayes sat across from Monica Sinclair, arms crossed like some detective in an old cop drama. Two other TSA agents, Tommy and Dan, leaned against the wall, watching like this was the best entertainment they'd had all week. "So," Brendan started, tossing the silver airplane keychain onto the table with the enthusiasm of a guy who thought he'd just cracked the biggest case of his life. "Let's talk about this." Monica didn't even look at it. Instead, she looked at him, right through him. "Talk about my keychain?" she said, voice so dry it could have started a wildfire. Brendan leaned forward, trying to match her energy. "Let's cut the games. You were acting suspicious, the scanner went off, and now I find this?" He tapped the keychain dramatically. "I think you know why we're here." Tommy, sipping his coffee like this was the most casual thing in the world, finally chimed in. "Dude, you pulled her in over a souvenir?" Brendan shot him a look. "It's not just a souvenir. People hide things in these. Could be a tracking device. Could be a disguised switchblade. Could be... A bomb?" Monica interrupted, deadpan. Brendan hesitated. She was mocking him. Dan sighed, rubbing his face. "Jesus, Brendan, even for you, this is a stretch." Brendan wasn't about to back down. He needed this. He needed to be right. He folded his hands on the table like he was about to deliver some big dramatic speech. "Miss Sinclair, I've been doing this job for 9 years. You know what that means? That means I've seen it all. People smuggling stuff in their shoes, hiding things in fake soda cans, even a guy who taped a bag of white powder under his grandma's wheelchair." He leaned in. "So forgive me if I don't just take your word for it." Monica exhaled slowly, tapping her nails against the table. "Wow," she said. 9 years of this, huh?" She glanced around the room, then back at him. "Must be exhausting." Brendan clenched his jaw. "I take my job seriously." "Oh, I can see that," she said, nodding. "A real patriot." Dan muttered, "This is so stupid," under his breath. Brendan ignored him. "So let's make this easy. Where were you going with this?" He nudged the keychain. Monica tilted her head. "On a plane." Tommy actually choked on his coffee. Dan coughed, covering up a laugh. "Dude, just let her go." But Brendan was locked in now. This wasn't just about the keychain anymore. This was about respect. And this woman? She was not respecting him. His eyes flicked to the security camera in the corner of the room. He knew this was being recorded. He needed to make sure he looked in control. "Let's run through this again," he said, voice tight. "You walked in, you set off the scanner, I walked in, handed you my ID, and followed every order you gave me," she cut in. Brendan narrowed his eyes. She leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, Agent Hayes, do you always pull people into interrogation rooms over airport souvenirs, or do I just stand out to you?" Brendan's stomach twisted. Dan and Tommy went quiet. Monica held eye contact. Brendan cleared his throat. "That's not..." She smiled. Not a warm smile. "Don't worry. I get it," she said, sitting back. "You were just doing your job, just following protocol. No bias, no bad intentions." Brendan could feel the room closing in on him. Tommy, who looked like he wanted to be anywhere but here, finally stepped forward. "Look, ma'am, we're going to run a quick scan on your keychain, and if it's clear, you're free to go." Monica nodded, unfazed. "Sounds good." Dan grabbed the keychain and walked it over to the scanner in the corner. A few beeps later, it was clean. Of course it was. Dan sighed. "She's good." Brendan's fists clenched under the table. Tommy rubbed his temple. "All right, Ms. Sinclair, sorry for the..." Monica held up a hand. "Actually," she said, voice casual, "I'd love to stay and chat a little longer." Brendan stiffened. Tommy blinked. What?" She turned to Brendan, eyes sharp, like she was about to deliver a punchline. "You see," she continued, "I have a bit of a curiosity. I'd love to know why, in an airport full of passengers, I was the one you decided to pull aside. What was it, my posture, my confidence, or just something about me that didn't sit right with you?" Brendan felt his pulse in his throat. Dan and Tommy both shifted uncomfortably. Brendan forced a laugh. "Now you're making this a bigger deal than it is." "Am I?" she asked, tapping a nail against the table. "Or are you just realizing you picked the wrong person today?" The words hung in the air like a loaded gun. Brendan stared at her, but for the first time since this all started, he felt like he wasn't the one in control, and he had no idea why. She sat back, folding her arms. "So, Agent Hayes, what's next?" And for the first time in his career, he didn't have an answer. The room felt smaller. The air, heavier. The second Monica Sinclair leaned back in her chair with that calm, calculated smile, Brendan knew he had fucked up. But there was no way in hell he'd admit that. He straightened his back, glancing at the two other TSA agents, Tommy and Dan. They looked uneasy. And if these two clowns, who had spent years watching him power trip over duty-free regulations, were starting to look nervous, that meant something was seriously off. Monica folded her hands on the table, fingers tapping lightly. It wasn't impatience. It was control. "So," she said smoothly, "what exactly happens next? You strip search me, call backup, maybe try to find another excuse to keep me here?" Brendan clenched his jaw. He needed to flip the script. He leaned forward, trying to regain some ground. "Ms. Sinclair, I don't know what kind of game you're playing here, but let's be real. People don't react like you're reacting when they get pulled in. They panic. They start tripping over their words. They don't sit there acting like they've already won." Monica tilted her head. "Already won?" The way she said it made something in Brendan's gut tighten. Dan, who up until now had been the human embodiment of a shrug, suddenly cleared his throat. Brendan? Can I talk to you for a sec?" Brendan barely glanced at him. "Not now." "No, dude, like now." Monica smiled, like a shark watching an injured seal. Brendan exhaled sharply and turned, stepping aside with Dan. Tommy stayed in the corner, looking like he was trying to mentally teleport out of the room. Brendan hissed under his breath. "What?" Dan's eyes flicked toward Monica, then back to Brendan. "I don't know, man. Something about this doesn't feel right." "No shit," Brendan muttered. Dan shook his head. "No, I mean, like, really doesn't feel right. You're pushing this way harder than you should be, and she's just sitting there, like she knows something we don't." Brendan exhaled through his nose. Of course she was acting like that. She was one of those people who thought rules didn't apply to them, who thought TSA was just a bunch of security guard wannabes there to be bossed around. He turned back toward Monica, his patience razor thin. And that's when she did something that set off every alarm in his brain. She reached into her blazer pocket. Tommy immediately jumped like she'd pulled out a grenade. "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Hands where I can see them!" Monica rolled her eyes. "Relax, officer. I'm not about to take you all hostage." Brendan's blood pressure spiked. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Monica paused, looked at him, like she was sizing him up. Then slowly she pulled out a small leather-bound ID badge and slid it across the table. The room went dead silent. Brendan stared. The badge was official. Not a fake, not a bluff, not some VIP access card that rich assholes flash to cut lines at the airport. No, it was the real deal. Brendan's stomach dropped. Federal Aviation Administration. Director of Airport Operations. The title hit him like a freight train. Dan inhaled sharply. Tommy blinked 3 times like his brain had just short-circuited. And Brendan? Brendan felt his career flash before his eyes. He looked up at Monica. She was watching him, waiting. A slow, cruel realization crawled down his spine. He hadn't just pulled some random businesswoman into interrogation over a keychain. He had just dragged the highest-ranking official in the entire damn airport into an interrogation room and accused her of smuggling. What? A souvenir? A weapon disguised as a kid's toy? Monica leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You were saying, Agent Hayes?" Brendan couldn't breathe. Dan coughed. "Holy shit." Tommy just whispered under his breath. "We are so screwed." Brendan's mind raced, searching for a way out. Maybe he could spin this. Maybe he could find a way to... Monica's voice cut through the room like a scalpel. "I need you to listen to me very carefully," she said. Her voice so calm it was terrifying. "Because right now you have 2 options." Brendan's throat went dry. "Options?" She tapped her badge. "Option 1. You let me go and we chalk this up to a misunderstanding." Brendan didn't like where this was going. "Or," she said, her smile widening, "Option 2. I make 1 phone call, and by the time you walk out of this room, your badge won't even scan at the employee entrance." The room went ice cold. Brendan's pulse thundered in his ears. Monica tilted her head. "Which one sounds better to you?" Dan didn't even hesitate. "I vote option 1. Tommy nodded so fast he might have given himself whiplash. "Yeah, 1 sounds solid." But Brendan? Brendan was too far in. He couldn't just roll over. Not now. He swallowed, forcing steel into his voice. You don't actually have that kind of power. Monica's smile grew. Oh, Brendan, she said, voice dripping with amusement. That's cute. She reached for her phone. Brendan's heart slammed against his ribs. Dan grabbed his arm. Dude, don't. Put the phone down, Brendan snapped, stepping forward. Monica didn't. She held it up, finger hovering over the screen. And that's when Brendan saw it. The name displayed on the screen. Not a lawyer, not a friend. The goddamn airport director. The man who could end Brendan's career with a 2-minute conversation. Monica locked eyes with him. Last chance, she murmured. Brendan couldn't speak, couldn't think, couldn't even breathe. And then she pressed the call button. The line started ringing. And Brendan knew. He had just lost. The phone rang once, twice. Brendan's stomach twisted into a knot so tight it could have crushed a diamond. He had seconds before his entire career went up in flames. Seconds before that call went through and the people who actually ran this place found out that he, Brendan freaking Hayes, had just tried to interrogate the damn director of airport operations over a souvenir keychain. Monica Sinclair sat there, phone in hand, calm as hell, like she had all the time in the world. Like she wasn't about to send his life into a tailspin. Tommy and Dan, they looked ready to flee the country. Brendan did the only thing his panicked brain could come up with. He lunged, not like he was about to tackle her. He wasn't that dumb. But his hand shot out, aiming for the phone. A last-ditch effort to stop the call before it connected. Big mistake. Because Monica? She was waiting for it. Before his fingers even got close, she smoothly pulled the phone back and tilted her head. Oh, she said, her voice laced with something that sent a full-body chill down Brendan's spine. You're gonna put hands on me now? Brendan froze. The words hit the room like a gunshot. Dan exhaled through his teeth. Oh, hell no. Tommy actually backed up. Dude, are you out of your goddamn mind? Monica didn't break eye contact. Didn't even blink. Instead, she pressed a button on her phone, but not the call button. The record button. Brendan's mouth went dry. His own voice echoed back at him from the speaker. Put the phone down. His words, his exact words. But out of context, it sounded like a threat, like an order. Brendan's blood turned to ice. Monica held up the phone, expression unreadable. You were already in deep, she said. But now? She shook her head slowly, like he was a damn disappointment. Now you're drowning. Brendan couldn't think, couldn't move, because she had just sealed his fate. This wasn't just a bad day at work anymore. This wasn't just a stupid mistake. This was career-ending. And Monica? She knew it. She set the phone down on the table, tapping the screen casually. I could send this to my legal team, she mused. I could send it to HR. I could send it straight to the FAA and have them personally review how you handle standard procedures. Brendan's heartbeat slammed against his ribs. Monica folded her hands under her chin, smiling slightly. But lucky for you, she said. I don't have time to watch you squirm all day. Dan exhaled hard, like he had been holding his breath for an eternity. Tommy, who looked like he had just witnessed a public execution, cleared his throat. Does that mean? Monica pushed back her chair, standing up smoothly. It means, she said, adjusting her blazer, I'm walking out of here. Brendan swallowed, his pride in shambles. Monica gave him one last look. Not angry, not smug, just done. Try pulling this stunt again, she said, voice low and sharp. And next time, I won't be so generous. She grabbed her keychain off the table, slid it back into her pocket, and walked out. No threats, no yelling. Just pure, calculated destruction. Dan collapsed into a chair. Jesus Christ. Tommy rubbed his face. Dude, you just got annihilated. Brendan couldn't speak because they were right. He had been checkmated, and there wasn't a damn thing he could do about it.